On this episode, we'll discuss how ministry leaders can prioritize rest and prevent burnout. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast, the show that is dedicated to inspiring leaders and empowering healthy churches. We do that through conversations, interviews, stories, all as we're exploring what's happening in ministry today and how pastors and leaders can navigate what lies ahead. I'm Kendall Connor, excited to be co-hosting today with Jessica Moore. Hey, how are you, Jess?
Hey, Kendall, I'm doing good. Ready for this episode. This is a really important topic.
Yes, I think it is too. And rest is important. And, it's funny here recently, we know that rest is more than this, but I just thought it would be a fun way to kind of kick it off today. I heard the other day, there's a big debate on social media on the importance or even the effectiveness of naps. Have you heard this?
I haven't.
People are up in the air. They're like 50-50. This was like a TikTok, Instagram trend, Are naps really important or do they work? And people are really split down the middle on this thing. Have you heard this?
I feel like no, but I would imagine that it depends on the person. I feel like even my husband and I kind of are split on this. If I can get a 20-minute, I can crash as soon as I lay down, as soon as I'm horizontal, I'm out. So if I can get 20 minutes, that's a huge win for me. It helps. But Jeff's like, if I sleep in the middle of the day, I wake up, I feel like I'm
really mess you up.
A zombie.
For me, I'm like, the only time that I really will take advantage of a nap is on a Sunday afternoon. To me, a Sunday afternoon nap is super essential.
It's just like a country song, right? Like fried chicken and then a nap and on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh, I love it. Well, I figured that today it is a good topic to jump in. We know, again, that rest is more than just do you take a nap on Sunday afternoons or not. Yeah. Last week, we discussed together, we went through Easter plans and getting ready for Easter. But I know that with a big day like that coming up, it's a really good time that we do talk about rest because I know that so many ministry leaders are going to be diving in and kind of giving it their all in this season.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be good. We have a very special guest that's joining us today, and that is Pastor Nick Newman. Now, if you haven't had a chance to connect with him before, I want to tell all of our folks who are listening today a little bit about Nick. He is the founder and lead pastor of Propel Church in Mount Pleasant, North Carolina, not too far from me, actually. Got to represent for North Carolina. Since starting that church, he has had the opportunity to coach and to train and to help pastors all over the world. And back in 2020, after going through all of the hardships of the pandemic and just everything that went along with it, he got to talking with different pastors who were just tired. Mm-hmm. And it was through that experience that he decided to start a lead pastor getaway. And so he, along this journey, has kind of developed this passion to help pastors to stay in ministry, stay in the game for the long run. And he learned along that process that rest is really a priority. And so he started a nonprofit that's called Selah Leaders. And that was born in 2022 is when he started that. And so they have the opportunity to provide leaders with resources for rest and longevity. It's just a really powerful ministry. And so I'm excited to jump in our conversation today about how ministry leaders can prioritize that rest and prevent burnout. And so without further ado, I want to jump in and welcome Pastor Nick Newman. How are you, Nick?
Well, guys, it's so great to be with you. I'm so pumped for today. Thanks so much for the invite.
Yeah, really excited that we get to do this. And of course, I just mentioned, being in North Carolina, we should have got together for this. We should have did this in person.
That's right. Yeah. You're not too far, a little over an hour and a half away. And you're in a great area.
Yeah, we're really, for those who are listening who may not know, I'm in the Piedmont Triad. So if you look up the Piedmont Triad in North Carolina, it is a really great spot. Not too busy, not too crazy, but we also aren't too far from mountains and all those different things. And so it is a great spot.
That's one of the best parts about North Carolina. I feel like even where we're tucked, we're about 40 minutes north of Charlotte, and I'm 2.5 hours from the mountains. I'm 3 hours from the beach. I don't like the beach, but if I did, it would be perfect. The mountains are where it's at.
That sounds
for
awesome.
Sure.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, so definitely got a lot of North Carolina representation today. This is going to be great. I'm excited to jump into this conversation. Of course, we just read the public bio, but I'd love to hear from you. Something we always ask everyone who jumps on the podcast with us: what's something that doesn't make that public bio about you? Something that all your family and friends, would know about you.
Yeah. So the people who are closest to me would tell you that I'm a serial entrepreneur at heart. I have like 100 side hustles,
Ooh, yeah,
and just love little projects. So I'm with Selah leaders. We help people rest and things like that. But one of the ways we do that is we teach them fly fishing. And so I'm
nice.
a fly fishing guide here in North
Wow.
Carolina, a sneaker collector. I run a thing called Preacher's Pit Barbecue. I've got some spices and things like that, and some barbecue sauce.
Wow.
Just love the intricacies of entrepreneurship, sneaker collector. So yeah,
That's
man. I mean,
amazing.
just love. Typically, what happens is I look for a hobby, and then that hobby turns into a way to generate a little kingdom revenue.
Yeah.
And we have a good time.
I love that. That's great.
And you don't always hear, I'm telling you, you've got a unique recipe that makes up Pastor Nick Newman here, because sneakers and fly fishing don't always, get
Good
generally
point.
associated with one another, right?
Yeah, that's so true. That's true. I love
Absolutely.
that.
I
How
love that.
fun.
Yeah.
That's a great mix. Well,
Okay.
cool. Yeah, take us to the first question, Jess.
Yeah, we'll kind of dive right in. Why don't you, Pastor Nick, tell us a little bit about your story, and how you serve other ministry leaders, and how your mission has kind of evolved over time.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, my story starts pre-Jesus, right? So, in August of 2011, I get kicked out of high school for drug possession. Really felt like my life was over. I'm sorry, April of 2011. August of 2011, I met Jesus, and he changed everything for me.
Wow.
I jumped headfirst into ministry. Like the night I got saved, I led my first Bible study and just
I love
became
it.
so passionate about telling anybody I could about this God who could free and redeem and restore. And
Wow.
shortly, so started serving in ministry, started teaching. In 2015, my wife and I started a church, and we started the church in the high school that I got kicked out of for drug possession.
Wow.
And so
what a redemption story, right?
yeah, I mean, God just full circle brought us back to this area. People who used to sell drugs for me, like lead our parking team and things like that now. So
Love
like
it.
that's been
Wow.
really cool to see, what God's done over the years. But about a year into our church planting journey, in 2016, I had both of my Achilles reconstructed. Portable church is a little hard on the body at times, and so tore one Achilles, had reconstruction surgery, then in the healing process tore the other one. They said it would heal, but I could either do it, do the surgery now or do it when I was 50, So decided, all right, we're close to that deductible, so let's do the second surgery. And after that, really realized at that time, like I had no people in ministry that I was really doing life with, but it was all on my shoulders. I read a Barna stat that was, I think, 18% of people who get into ministry in their 20s make it to their 30s. And
Wow.
so I looked at my life and the rhythms that I had at that point. And when we started Propel, we were 22 years old and went, yeah, it's going to be me. I mean, there's no way that this thing has a long shelf life. So hit the reset button, assessed rhythms, implemented some things. Then we went through COVID, and a lot of the stuff that we had already implemented were things that I realized a lot of pastors needed. So this lead pastor getaway started. I invited 7 pastors to the mountains, and essentially it's really simple. I actually don't think that pastors need another escape. I think they need equipping environments.
Wow.
Unfortunately, what I've found is the majority of events that are designed for pastors to get out of town, not conferences, but to get them out of town, are just escapes. And the
Mm.
problem with that is if you live for an escape, if you go to the mountain, if you go to that spot and you go, man, I just can't wait till I get back here. When you can't get back there, you end up trying to find an escape in your hometown, or you go
Wow.
one town over to find an escape. And what ends up happening is what James talks about. You end up living double-minded. And
Mm.
so
Wow.
instead of creating an escape, we really wanted to teach pastors how to thrive in the pressure cooker called
Mm.
ministry. And
So good.
that's what we do on those lead pastor getaways. So we started those from the first one. We saw one pastor escape suicide. One pastor, his marriage was restored. And we got an email from a wife who said, I don't know what you did with my husband, but you can take him at any point again because I got a new
Mm.
man back. And
I love
so
it.
hundreds of pastors have gone through this now, and we're excited. I mean, we're getting ready for next year where this thing expands outside of North Carolina into multiple states and past just lead pastors.
Wow.
Very cool.
Very
Wow.
cool. And, you know, some of the things that you touched on, I mean, you can see the seriousness of just how important it is for ministry leaders and pastors to get that rest and to also to be able to not take find an escape, but to really find something that's intentional, right?
Yeah.
Wow. I think being able to operate within the pressures, I think that doesn't just apply to pastors. I mean, that's a lot of what leadership is.
Yeah.
And we know we've kind of called this out in previous episodes. What's tricky about the church is the target is bigger on those leaders' backs, right? Because they're doing kingdom work. So it transcends just running a business or any other type of leadership. It is a leadership with a ton of pressure. And so that is mind blowing to me. I don't think I've ever even considered, the escape is great. The breaks are great, but being able to operate, I mean, we're going to talk about this more, but knowing how to do that. So it sounds like they are kind of escaping, but how are you equipping them to operate within that pressure? So
I mean, for us, the play is actually a whole lot more simplistic than most people think. I think one of the tendencies of the American church is to overcomplicate what God has made incredibly simple. And so we do a really good job of it. So I mean, when we get pastors in a room, we don't, and when I say like, it is a getaway, you're getting out of town and things like that.
Sure.
It's a 1 hour session a night. Most people think if they see the image online, they're going on a fishing trip. It's really not that. I mean, you'll get to go fishing. I'll take you fishing whenever you want. I named my boat Visitation for a reason, so that the pastor can be out on visitation. So, but when on night one, our whole conversation is all on identity. Hey, you're a son before you're a pastor. You're a child of God before you are a blank, whether that is leader, husband, employee, whatever. You are a child of God first. There has never been a single time where God has looked and said, hey, Pastor Nick, how you doing? But he does call me son. And so if I don't have the identity piece in check all the time, something's going to go haywire because now I am living double-minded, even if it's not intentional. And so night one is all about, hey, what's your identity in? And it's easy to say, our identity is solely rooted in Christ, but the practice of that is just not true most of the time for us.
Right.
And it's a gut check pretty consistently. I've got I have a tattoo on my wrist, and there we go. It says sonship over leadership. Because I need a daily reminder that I'm a son first over it.
So good.
And my memory is not that great. So putting it on my wrist, I was going to see it pretty frequently.
I love that. So as we kind of dive in more, so talking about ministry is every day, right? Like this is something these leaders are facing. Schedules stay busy. We've got big events coming up. Easter's coming up. You know how different ministry seasons can go, and they can be busier than others. Rest is an essential part of, finding those rhythms of rest, figuring out how to build in those moments. Can you express? Is it important that you build in moments around, especially around big events coming off of Easter and things like that? Is it important that you're building in time for rest if you're serving a ministry like this?
Yeah, I think it's not just something that we so American culture teaches us this, that we work really hard just for whatever vacation, right?
Yeah.
And so you work 8, 9, 10 months, and then you take a week off, and somehow you think it's going to fix it. It doesn't. That's just not how life works. And if you and I choose to not rest, I believe there's this thing called a forced Sabbath. It's what happens when you and I are working and we're running and gunning, and then all of a sudden we randomly get sick for a couple days. You go to the doctor and you're like, "Hey, what is wrong?" And they go, "Well, nothing's wrong. We just think you got something. Rest for a couple days, and then you'll be fine."
Yeah.
Your body was actually designed to rest. Even when you go back into Genesis, rest is not a curse of the fall. It's in chapter 2, not chapter 3, right? So if we're looking at our calendars, especially around big things like Easter and Christmas and things like that, and going, you know what, I'm going to work really hard and then I'll put a day on the calendar to take off. Don't be surprised when you still feel exhausted at the end of it.
Yeah.
Because it's not a sustainable pace. The sustainable pace is, what do my weekly rhythms look like that incorporate rest? And resting, or even the Sabbath, is not necessarily absent of doing ministry. Because some people go, well, it's my day off, I'm not doing any ministry. How often did Jesus rebuke the Pharisees for not doing ministry on the Sabbath? Sabbath is all about connection with God.
Right.
Because the Sabbath is not for us, it's for him, and it's a byproduct of being in relationship with him. God doesn't punish me if I don't work hard enough to, like, oh, you know what, I don't want to spend time with you, so neglect your Sabbath. When you see God create Adam and Eve, Genesis 2, it's day 7 for God, but it's day 1 for Adam and Eve. Sons and daughters don't have to earn a day off. They don't earn rest.
So good.
It's a byproduct of connection and relationship.
That's such a good reminder. I mean, Kendall and I are both parents, and I think something that we started doing with our kiddos when they were pretty young, and it's been harder to be more consistent now that they're teens, but as we try to set aside one day a month, where we've got a son and a daughter, so we'll kind of swap kids. Either I'll take Noah and Jeff will take Lisette, or vice versa. But we go and take them on a date, and it's like this sweet, sweet treasure. And it doesn't matter, to your point, what they've done or not done leading up. That is just something that we prioritize because of the relationship we have with them. So kind of in a practical, earthly sense, that's a connecting point for me. That's a great, great reminder.
And I'm sure that ministry leaders who are listening, we all can see the value in resting, right? But a lot of times we make a lot of excuses, if we're just being honest, right? Of why we just don't have time, or maybe like once we get past this, then we can find some rest. But I'm curious just to hear from you, Nick, on what are the common obstacles that you hear that church leaders are facing when they try to incorporate rest into their schedules, and how can they overcome those things?
Yeah. I mean, I think most of us feel like we're too busy, or we don't have time to take off. And, this is a ministry podcast, right? I eat, sleep. I love scripture. Because I think God has a lot to say about the things that we navigate and we wrestle through. And I'll tell you, for me, one of the game-changing thoughts, when I read scripture, I read it logically a lot of times. And I've always been fascinated at the story of when Jesus walks on water, because the text tells us that he They feed 5,000 people, which, is 12 to 20,000 is what most scholars believe. He tells the disciples, get in the boat, go to the other side of the lake. And then it then says Jesus dismisses the crowd, goes to spend time with the Father. He goes and has some quiet time. And then somehow Jesus meets the disciples in the middle of the lake.
Mm-hmm.
There are 12 individuals that are rowing.
Mm-hmm.
He dismisses 12 to 20,000 people, which if you've ever had a parking team before, you definitely need more than one, right? To get all those people out. He gets rid of the crowd, goes, spends time with the Father, and then still somehow has the ability to meet them in the middle. And the revelation that I felt like God gave me years ago was that you'll accomplish more resting than rowing. Like you accomplish infinitely more doing the work of spending time with the Father, doing the work of focusing on your connection. And what you'll actually find is you'll end up in the exact same spot as people who are grinding and hustling and rowing, but you're not freaked out by the storm that's going on.
Okay. That's so good.
So, I mean, I could do a praise break in my office right now.
I'm telling you,
I'm
like trying to take notes over here so I can steal this. I gotta turn this into a message or something. I'll make sure I give you a little credit or something. What do you think?
You don't even have to do that. We give it all for free. You take it.
I love it. What a word! Wow,
that's incredible. Okay,
and so I think that I think sometimes the biggest obstacle in you and I resting is that we've overestimated our importance in God's plan.
Wow.
Okay. Woo.
He does not need us. He wants us.
That's so good.
Wow.
Relationships are drastically different when I need somebody versus I want somebody.
Yep.
Yeah.
And because God is all powerful, He does not need a single thing from you and I. But He gives us an invitation. And that invitation is to abide and to trust in Him. And I think that if I was to boil down rest into something like so simple, rest is trusting God to take care of the world without you.
Wow.
Like He has been doing this without you for a lot longer than He's been doing it with you. And He has the ability to cover every single thing He calls. He does not need your effort. He does not need your hustle. He does not even need your activity. He needs your availability and your willingness to obey even when your flesh doesn't feel like it. And I think that's where we have hardships at times, is that we have all this drive and this motivation to push and do and go. And God just says, stop. Even in Genesis 2, work never becomes holy until God stops doing it. Everything has been good.
Wow.
But there's a transition from good to holy.
Yeah.
And so like I think sometimes we ministry leaders especially, we do a ton of good work. Are we doing holy work? Holy work is when you stop doing and you trust God to cover it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this one multiple times because I feel like you've got some real good one-liners in there that just, I felt like I need a tattoo of it. Yeah.
Come on.
Okay. Back to questions. So let's talk logistics right now. So how can church community support their leaders in maintaining a healthy balance between ministry and responsibility? So let me just put another layer to this question. We have folks listening to this podcast that aren't necessarily the senior pastor, right? And so I think this maybe kind of keeping that in mind as you answer this next question. We talked about implementing personal healthy rhythms, but let's look at that in more of a corporate setting. What would that look like?
Yeah. And so we do that at Selah Leaders. We help church boards and elders and deacons kind of learn how to come alongside of their pastor in areas like this. I think that the biggest for me, it's wild that we have policies on moral failures, but don't have them on rest. Like, if it's valuable, we create policies and standards for it. And so I think you need church policies to help facilitate what healthy rest rhythms look like.
Yeah.
Because there are some pastors, it really depends on how the board structure is set up, but some pastors don't rest because they feel like, well, I don't know what people will think if they found out that I took a day off. Well, they didn't get a day off. Why should I get a day off? And I would just say Sabbath is not for church leaders. It's for God's kids. So just because somebody's living in disobedience doesn't mean that gives me a free pass to do it too. Like that's not how that works. And so I think you need policies, some really helpful ones. So one of the things that I believe is that preventative maintenance is cheaper than replacement, right?
100%.
So having policies and budget line items that help your team rest is really important. So I'll give you some of ours at Propel. I go away 4 times a year for about 3 days to just spend time with Jesus and to rest and stay healthy. So as the lead pastor, that's my system. For all of our paid staff, we pay for them to go away and do that twice a year. For non-paid staff, we pay for them to go do it once a year.
Wow.
Here's the thing. We're talking about, I mean, if the average hotel room, is 100, 120 a night, for $240 a year for a leader, I get to show them I care more about their relationship with God than I do just the output that they have.
Yeah.
So that's like a very practical one. I think when it comes to HR and time off, you need differentiation between Sabbath and vacation, or sabbatical and vacation. Like, look, vacation is for your family. Sabbath is for the Lord. I'm not saying you don't spend time with your family on your Sabbath, but if you think sending your pastor to Disneyland is beneficial for his soul, it might not be, right? Like, he might come back even more tired. And you go, well, you just took a vacation. What do you mean you're tired? It's the things are two different things. So I think those are some healthy, just a few like little policy ideas. But the biggest thing is like playing your part in the body. So when we do these lead pastor getaways, night 1 is on sonship or identity. Night 2 is on rest, where we break down some of the Genesis 2 stuff that I just shared with you. I will tell you the most beneficial one that we haven't hit yet, and I'll hit it really quick, is that because it's day 7 for God, but day 1 for Adam and Eve, Sabbath should be the start of your week, not the end of it.
Okay.
Because you were actually designed to work from rest, not for it. So if we reframe even our week, like my Sabbath is Friday. Friday's not the end of my week. Because if I don't do great Monday through Thursday, I get sick, something happens, all of this stuff, well, then I'll be tempted, if my Sabbath's at the end of my week, to move it and go, you know what? Oh, I can't do it. I've got too many things to do. It'd be like missing Mondays, right? Sabbath. So for me, Sabbath, my Friday is when my week starts, and I've reframed over time. I've reframed the way myself and my team look at the week, because Friday's the start. I do like a half day Saturday. Sundays are really long. And then Monday is a busy day, but then I begin to taper. So my week starts after Friday. Saturday, there's an on ramp, but then there's a natural down cycle as well. So that's day 2 is on that. Day 3 is on stewardship. So as a pastor, you are not the body. You are part of the body. So figuring out the unique part you play is really important. But then looking at who God has entrusted you with, I think everything you need's in the house. So who has God brought to the body, and how can you empower them? And if you're a leader that's serving a pastor, you doing the self-discovery work, figuring out what part you can play.
Yeah.
Your pastor would probably love if you looked at him and said, "Hey, can I serve you in insert specific area?" You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
if you come and go, "Hey, is there anything I can do?" They're probably so overwhelmed right now that they're not even going to give you an answer. But if
Yeah.
you do
Yep.
the work of figuring out where your unique giftings fits a need for the body, I think that's super beneficial.
That's really
Yeah.
good. And just for anyone who's not serving in anyone who's not serving in that lead pastor role, whether you're on staff or a volunteer or whatever, just knowing that it's important to guard that time for your lead pastor I
Yeah.
feel like it's just such an important part. Because I love that you set the policies and the rules and the things that are set up ahead of time. I think that's really important. But
Yeah.
also it's the small things I feel like that sometimes that you got to remember, like, okay, if it's his day away, come on, like, don't be texting him nonsense. Like, you can
Yeah.
figure
Right.
it out, or either just wait. It's like okay to wait, trying to figure out whatever. You just skip the text, skip the emails, just
Yeah.
let him be for a minute, and serve that lead pastor in that way, because I feel like it's
Yeah.
those small things that I feel like we put it on paper, but it's sometimes we forget when we're in the
Yeah.
middle of all of the ministry, right? To
Yeah.
have that time for them.
Well, and for a pastor, so one of the biggest reasons why I love, we've built a teaching team over the years. I only teach about 35 weekends a year in our church.
Yeah.
I travel quite a bit and teach year round. But normally, when I'm not teaching on Sunday, I'm sitting in our church, and it's really intentional because I need to sit on the front row and do a couple things. I need to make sure that I know who I am when I'm not on that stage. And like, if there's anything that's weird there, I get, some of those like search me God moments a couple times a year. But two, like, I want to make sure that I would attend this church if I wasn't the pastor of it. Because if I wouldn't, then I actually get to do something about that, right? Like we
Yeah.
can make
Right.
some tweaks. But when I'm away, one of the things that I do is I begin to make a list of everything that didn't work without me. And then that becomes my focus once I get back. Because
Yeah.
if it can't function without you, at some point it becomes about you, right? So spending that time and that energy to go, well, it doesn't work when I'm not there. And then
Yeah.
like that becomes my punch list when I get back.
Yeah.
It gives me those to-dos, even on the day off. Like when they send me messages in the past, well, now I know, like, hey, nobody knows where this, and this are located. Those are really easy things to fix.
Let's
Right.
fix it.
Right.
Yeah. That is not very, and I don't want to make a blanket statement. That is very different than the way I think the church in the United States of America culturally functions. I think a lot of churches are attached to one individual personality, which is a very slippery slope. So that is a great challenge. That is a great challenge, I think, for church leaders to say, what did you say? You said, if it doesn't work without me, then it's about me.
It's about you. Yeah.
And that's important. That's important, church leaders.
I don't know that you will find, and it's heartbreaking to see people fall, because I think there is a responsibility for ministry leaders to consistently remove themselves from the pedestal people put them on.
Sure.
But I don't think long-term you find a healthy leader where everything is built around them. There's definitely not a healthy church on the long run. Now, if you want short-term fruit,
Sure.
I would say this. I think with my teaching gifts, our church could probably grow faster if I taught every weekend. However, then it's fully dependent on me.
Yeah.
And the shelf life of that is absurd. Like it doesn't last. And so if I want to build something that lasts and actually do Ephesians 4, equipping saints for ministry, that means over a period of time, I'm going to do less. And what I've found is it actually opens me up to do more things that I'm really, really gifted in and passionate about, because I'm only playing one part of the body.
And
Yeah.
I'll just remind, this is something that I've had to figure out the hard way. Serving in ministry is that, yeah, you might absolutely love getting to do all of the stuff, right? I want to do this. I'm passionate about this. You think no one can do this like me. But the true
Yeah.
joy in ministry is seeing someone else, being able to build someone else up and seeing them thrive when you just let go of something. And now that you've shared that responsibility, you turn around and you look, and sure, there's always that dip, right? Like it may not be the exact same when you first hand it over and share that responsibility. But when you see that person begin to thrive and really excel in that role, I mean, there's just so much joy in seeing other people to be able to take on some of those responsibilities and seeing them grow as a leader.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the really valuable. And all in that same motion, you have taken some things off of your shoulders, taken some of that weight off. It's really incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to insert one tiny piece here that we really haven't discussed. Pastor Nick, I'm assuming this is part of what you all discuss when you do, your getaways. But I think that it's noteworthy that investing back into the church leadership, the downstream impact of that is mutually beneficial for everyone, including the pastor's family, their marriage, right? And then obviously the congregation and the community. So not only is there that it's equivalent, the amount of pressure on the pastor to succeed is the same pressure on the opposite end, the pressure to rest, right? So those same people impacted on both ends of the spectrum will either, see success or suffer if that rest isn't as important as the leadership.
And
I think
that's
Jethro's
Jethro's. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and you see that in when Moses is having a conversation with his father-in-law, Jethro, right? So Jethro's there. He's going, "Hey, Moses, you've been standing out here all day listening to people complain." Now, every ministry leader knows exactly what that feels like, right? And so he goes, "What are you doing?" And Moses begins to tell him, like, "Hey, these people come to me to hear from God, and I give them this, and I do this." And I think it's a son-in-law who is trying to get like a praise from his father-in-law, and he doesn't get that. Right. Jethro is, "Hey, this is not good." And what he says to Moses is that you will wear yourself out and the people too.
Yep.
And that's interesting because it doesn't seem like he's putting any pressure on them. All the pressure's on his shoulders. So how would they wear themselves out?
Yeah.
It's because they'll never actually fulfill their intended purpose.
Right.
And so the plan for sustainability or longevity that he gives is that you break things down, that you you do the breakdown of 1,000, 150, 10, and you empower those leaders. They handle the little things and bring you the major stuff. And it's crucial for us to do that.
Pastor Nick, I mean, just going through these things today, I know that there's a lot of ministry leaders on the other side of this who are listening. And I'm just wondering if you could give them any kind of encouragement or any kind of guidance if they are currently feeling overwhelmed. They're maybe even to the point where they're considering stepping back from their role in ministry. Can you encourage them? Can you speak into them before we move on to our final 5 today?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest blessings that I ever did was I took a moment to slow down and assess Matthew 11:28-30, right? When Jesus says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." I remember sitting in the mountains reading that passage of scripture, and I audibly laughed. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, this thing is so heavy. It is so difficult. And I just felt like the Lord in that moment said, well, am I lying or is your methodology off? And it was me, right? Just in case, there's any people wondering, right? Like, he's not lying. His yoke really is easy. Like when we get into 1 John and it says that the laws of God are no longer burdensome to those who love him. The weight of ministry is perfectly designed to rest on the shoulders of the one who died for us. And yet we get to come alongside of him to do what he's called us to do. And so if you're feeling exhausted, my encouragement is to sit down, open that passage of scripture, really know that God is truthful at his word when he says his yoke is easy. You just need some different methodology. And we're here to help serve and help you with that, because you're probably just one or two tweaks away from actually experiencing joy in ministry again.
That's very encouraging.
For sure. Well, something that I want to transition to is we like to wrap things up on all of our calls, on all of our podcasts, with a final five. That's a rapid fire. Now, listen, when I say rapid and I put that next to rest, it seems like we're going to fly through these, but we can take our time to get through these. But the first one that I want to ask you before we jump off this call today is, what's one book that's on this subject, or just anything that you would recommend to church leaders
I bet I know what it is.
in this?
I don't know that you do. It's the one I got married 11 years ago. It's by Kevin DeYoung. It's called Crazy Busy. Okay. And it was such a breath of fresh air to help kind of look at the pace back. Now, this was, 2014, but man, that would be, it's a good start. And it's only like 60 pages. Like, it's not long at all.
Is that specific to ministry leaders, or is it just life?
That is such a great question. I will be honest and tell you I've not read it since 2014.
Okay.
I do remember that I read it on my honeymoon, and it was wonderful.
Okay. Crazy busy. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I need you to be honest on this one. Okay.
You got it.
What's the last thing you listened to on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever you listen to music on?
Who else? That worship song that came out of Gateway right now is on repeat. I got some ADHD, and so things, I tend to repeat something until I get tired of it and never want to hear it again. So it's on the repeat loop right now, over and over.
Okay.
What about what is your favorite piece of technology or software right now? Okay,
so my favorite piece of software right now, or technology, is I've got it right here. This is my DJI Osmo Pocket 3.
Yeah.
So it has been phenomenal for shooting just videos on the go, stories and things like that. And even like today, I'm hitting a behind the scenes shot. It can't hear you, you're in my ear, but doing a behind the scenes shot of what I'm filming with you right now.
Love it. No, that's really cool.
Okay, so a quote or advice that has stuck with you over the years, and this doesn't have to be relevant to our topic today.
Yeah. I was complaining about ministry, the pace, the busyness of it at one point. I had a ministry leader who asked me about rest. This was before I got really passionate about it. And I gave him my list of all the excuses, right? And he looked at me and he took a sip of his coffee and he looked me dead in my eyes and he said, "That's cool. Just know the excuse only satisfies the teller." Wow. And for me, that was like, okay, like I don't really know what to say to that, but it has stuck with me over the years. When I find myself making excuses, it's actually way more beneficial to just own the fact that you were in the wrong and then move on, versus trying to build out this big narrative that helps justify, especially when it comes to things like Sabbath, right? When we ignore it, it was a command, and it's one that the Lord said to do throughout all generations. So arguing, there's not an excuse to justify sin.
No. So, it's good.
Finally today, what is one thing that you would like to communicate to our audience of church leaders?
Yeah. You're going to make it. Like, there are plenty of moments in ministry where you feel like you're not going to make it. Like, this is going to be the thing that takes you out. Like, your church is not going to overcome this obstacle or this hurdle. And I think one of the greatest things to know about God is that you will never beat him to a destination. So there is never a moment where you're going to outpace where God has already been. And so you pray and you seek after him and you go, Lord, if you've seen the beginning from the end, you already know where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do. Today, will you help align my steps? I don't have to figure out how to fix tomorrow. Tomorrow's got enough problems. Today, I'm going to trust you with what I've got going on. And tomorrow, I'm going to do the same thing over and over and over again. And I mean, I think that's that would be my encouragement there.
That's
so
awesome.
Good.
That's a good word for today. You know, Nick, this has been awesome. What a great conversation we've been able to have. Where can people follow you? Where can they find out about, more about these trips and all of these different things that you offer?
Yeah. So my social handles are at PS Nick Newman. And then you can hit nicknewman.com for some resources there. We also have selahleaders.com where you can find out more information about Lead Pastor Getaway and events and even documents and resources. One that we are finishing up right now is a 1-day DIY rest guide for people. Because the number one thing that we see is that people go, well, that's cool. I'm going to take a day of rest, but I don't know what to do. And so we want to help resource people in that way.
No, that's awesome. So I would encourage everyone who's listening to definitely check out these resources. And I love the resource that you just shared. I can't wait for you to hit publish on that. That's going to be a great one. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. It's been awesome.
Absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure.
And of course, Jess, I always appreciate you co-hosting on here with me. And for everyone who's listening, thank you for listening along with us today. I hope that this has been beneficial to you and a good reminder that rest is important in every season. And overall, I just would say if it has been beneficial to you, one of the best ways that you can help us is to help us get this in the ears of more and more people by sharing it. Maybe you've got a friend that's in ministry that would benefit from hearing this and hearing some of the advice that we've been able to share today. Send them a link to it, or send them drop a link for them so that they can follow along wherever you listen to your podcast. Be sure to follow us. If you're watching along on YouTube today, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We just want to make sure that we get the opportunity to speak into you more and invest in you, pour into you, so that you can thrive and build healthy churches. So thank you for being along with us today. Thank you again to Jess and to Nick. And until next time, we'll see you right back here again on Church Leadership Lab.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.